You are listening to TBR Radio Presents The DIXIE Heritage Show, with your host, the Director of DIXIE Heritage, Dr. Ed DeVries.
Last week, we spoke with Paul Angel, the Executive Editor of TBR, of the Barnes Review, and we were talking about some articles and an editorial that appeared in the March-April issue of TBR magazine, particularly the fact that the FBI has basically declared white people in America to be the greatest threat to our domestic security. And so now that we've been declared the enemy, of course, we all need to be investigated, harassed, surveyed, targeted for arrest and imprisonment and so forth. And so we talked about that. And we also talked a little bit about VP Hughes's excellent article that was in the magazine as well. And so we're going to kind of take that conversation a little bit further this week, and maybe about 10 or 12 minutes of conversation there between Paul and myself. Particularly, Paul is talking about how some of this is playing out in the southern state of Virginia, which is where his home is. And, you know, there's a lot of racial tension in the state of Virginia right now, but it's not with the people who live in Virginia. It's happening in the State House. It's with the politicians of Virginia trying to stir up this racial tension. You know, the Virginians themselves, they're coexisting very comfortably with one another. But we're just going to kind of put this into perspective just a little bit. And then afterwards, we'll have a brief conversation with our friend John Schneider, who is coming out of the closet, if you will, as a Donald Trump supporter. So that's going to be today's TBR Radio Presents the DIXIE Heritage Show. It's going to be a great one.
As I've said many times before, in a rural area of Virginia, and I will say that we bend over backwards to make people feel comfortable here or legally in this area, no matter where they come from. And I think whites have always done this, and maybe to our own detriment. Perhaps we're even on our way out the door as a race, the way it's going with the number of mixed race marriages we see. I look at the demographics, and I think for the first time ever, more whites are dying than are being born here. It just happened. And we're also now approaching approximately 50% of the total population, the remaining population being, I don't know. They say that blacks are only 12.5% of the population, but it looks to me like they're probably more, because every new mixed race baby that comes along is considered a black child. And also you have a large number of Muslim population here growing, and you have a large Latino population. The average was, and by the way, blacks are going down. They are something like, say, 15% of the population. And they're averaging a couple kids, but the Hispanic mothers and fathers are having an average of 5 children, and Muslim families in this country are having an average of 7. I think we're having 1.5. And then, of course, the black community is plagued by abortion, which is a racket, a child infanticide racket. The idea that our governor here in Virginia would actually support the idea of a full-term abortion is absolutely satanic barbarism. But people just don't even seem to bat an eye at this stuff anymore.
Well, VP Hughes, she talks about that in her article, that, basically that these pagan jungle, civilizations of ancient whatever, that, human sacrifice was one of their big whatevers, and that now, our American culture, we've basically revived human sacrifice in the form of abortion.
Yeah, I know. People just don't get it. I'm not sure how and why, and it's all part of the big plan, I guess. But that they've convinced women that the right to have abortion is so important, and most women have been say so too. And of course, in our country, and being generally libertarian about that particular point of view, we don't want to say, well, a woman can't do this or that with her body. But there comes a point when you're, without a doubt, slaughtering a child. Is it before a heartbeat, after a heartbeat? Most people would say, and most of my readers would say, it's the time of conception. And that these people, if they're going to do this, there's so many ways to prevent pregnancy now, diaphragms and IUDs and pills and morning after pills and all this other stuff, having your tubes tied. Can't you show a little self-restraint? Don't you know the consequences of your prurience, we'll say? of your sexual desires? Well, of course, you've got to think about that. But they convinced everybody that because the little fetus that's really small looks like a fish, that it really is a fish. Well, I got news for you. That's not going to grow into a fish. Okay, that's going to be a little human being. But it's all part of the devaluation of life that's going on here in general. I mean, why doesn't the government care that blacks are slaughtering themselves in this country? What are you worried about white supremacy for? Get out there and talk about this issue and figure out how you're going to get the black community to stop these 36,000 killings a year. But they don't care about black people. So, it's weird that you would ignore that slaughter, that you would ignore the slaughter of the unborn, but you would say that focus on the FBI is completely focusing on the few and far between violent white groups or infiltrated white groups that weren't weaponized until infiltrators and informants came in. You would concentrate on the wrong stuff. It's all mixed up. The news media is right there the entire time.
Well, here's the question that I have about this too, and the article didn't go there, but I'm going to go there, and that is, if you say white supremacist or you say militant white whatever, the first thing that comes to people's mind is the Klan. And the FBI infiltrated the Klan back in the 90s, and by the end of the 1990s, pretty much every leader in the Klan was an undercover FBI agent.
Yeah, I know. And
so is the FBI investigating itself?
It's a self-fulfilling thing. I remember that the most virulent KKK chapters were always created by and or infiltrated by domestic intelligence. Now, the definition of white supremacy in general is that it's the racist belief that white people are superior to people of other races and therefore should be dominant over them. So we have to ask ourselves, what do we want for this country? Are we white supremacists because we would like the demographics to kind of stay the same so that, remember, we're a republic, but we're really, the way it is now, is a democracy. And you got to watch out for democracy because before you know it, this country will change drastically through democracy and demographics to the point where, who knows, in the future, somebody may, let's say you got 435 approximately members of the House of Representatives, maybe 400 are Muslims and Latinos. They might make the national language Arabic. They might make the national language Latino. We can't stop it in a democracy, which is why we have to be aware of what's going on. We have to have more children. Are we supremacists because we want things to stay the same? Well, this country is pretty awesome. With all the complaints we have about it, with all the battling that goes back and forth, and I always say this, poverty-stricken people are for the most part eating. We have a few too many kids in this country, maybe a million, there's millions of them. We can do a better job with feeding them. We can help them more. We are, to some degree, a welfare/socialist state in some aspects of our society. So we have adopted this whole fear of socialism. Socialism can work. I mean, it worked in Germany. It was National Socialism, and it didn't have to have been the way it was. It's just that the product of the people goes back to the people instead of the product of the people going to the state. That being said, this country is pretty awesome. Well, are we concerned that it's going to change if the demographics change? Well, let me give you a demographic example. And again, sometimes we talk about these multiple times, but look at the island of Haiti, right? The island of Haiti. Unfortunately, whites were enslaving blacks, but whatever. And finally the blacks rose up and slaughtered every mulatto and every white on the island, went to the other side of the island. Haiti's a mess. It's been run by their own people for many, many years. And the right side of the island is pretty good. Okay, what does that mean? Well, as I mentioned, this guy, Jared Diamond, who was the Jewish writer who wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel, he flat out says that it's inexplicable. He didn't want to tell you the truth. In the end, he says that certain people simply aren't ready for civilization. Okay, it's why there's such corruption in Mexico. And it's not necessarily the Mexicans, it's the Indians. They just haven't lived in the civilized world long enough to know it. It's the example of Haiti. They didn't know how to run a country. They'd never had a nation to run before. And they never saw one in Africa at that particular point in time. And so when you hand over your country to groups that say, don't hold the same values, and by the way, a lot of the Hispanics that come over here are Catholics, but a lot of them are animists, it seems like, or, Santeria type, I think it is. So you got to watch out what they're worshiping and what they're not. But this system has worked for us. Are we insistent that whites are supreme? Look at our democracy. We have a large number of, by the way, we didn't even give women the right to vote here in this country till the 1900s. But we have large numbers of women. We have large numbers of blacks, Latinos growing, Muslim congressmen and everything else. And I don't see whites running around fussing about it. They accept the system as it is. The system has worked. But we're concerned, and this might be considered supremacy, that when now we're, say, 20% of the population and other groups who are coming in here, say Ilhan Omar, coming in from wherever she came from, Somalia or wherever it was, who have seen nothing but death and destruction and think that you have to have some brutal central government telling everybody what to do, are making the decisions that who knows what they might tell us what we can and can't do. Soon enough, this coronavirus is going to be interesting to see just how much the government is going to tell people what to do and what they can't do. I mean, locking down entire portions of northern Italy, that's a police state. And so it'll be interesting to see how people react to that here. They certainly reacted to the cops taking over Boston when they were looking for the alleged Boston bombers there with cheers. So, American public is certainly brainwashable, but it would have been nice if we are going to lose our control over this country sometime in the future. And this is why some people push for, separate states and maybe an area of the United States that would be a white homeland. I don't think it's going to happen. But you have to look at the animosity that the news media has fomented against us. Why is that? Every cop that shoots somebody is white, even though a lot of black cops shoot people. Every white person that comes across really wants you to be re-enslaved. I mean, it is the narrative of, watch out for Christians. Christians don't want you to practice Islam in this country, and they discriminate against you, and they hate you, and they don't respect you. It's all BS, man. And so inevitably, if we do lose political control, they will have created a massive number of people who've been brainwashed into thinking that whites are a threat, when in fact, and especially for black people, I think, since after Jim Crow, and even during that, before that period, the people that were fighting to give slaves freedom and the right to vote and such are the best friends they ever had in this world. Where else have whites been so willing to integrate other races and other religions into society but here in the United States? And I always say this too. And if whites are so horrible and so dangerous and so racist, then why did 350,000 Union soldiers willingly give up their lives to free the slaves, if that's what the war was truly all about? Never hear about 350,000 whites laying down their lives, affecting their families' futures, multiple brothers being dead, family lines stopping during the Civil War, or the war between the states, as we prefer to call it, or Lincoln's War. But never, no thanks for that. Do we demand thanks? Not really. Okay, and do you really think a Southern boy went all the way from Southern Florida all the way to the fields of Virginia up here to fight and die because it keeps slaves? No, it's all baloney. So I will say that rather than being the most dangerous threat to the United States, we are truly the best partners, the best allies that anybody could ever find. And I just find it appalling that the FBI would say that we're as dangerous as ISIS. Now, listen, we are dangerous. Don't screw with us too much. We'll eventually fight back, and we have it many, many times. It's just that these few and far between groups are pretty much impotent as far as their ability to affect change. And nobody in the news media focuses on the wonderful philanthropy of just white Christians in general. I'm glad you wrote that article a couple issues ago about Lottie Moon. Finally recognized. Maybe Asians and whites are more willing to praise each other. That even the communist Chinese were willing to admit that this was a great woman who did great things in China. Yeah. We'll see how it goes. I'll be dead before I know, but my kids might not be. And we see things are changing. But I will say this, out here in Virginia, it seems like everybody gets along quite well. I don't see all this racism. I don't see all this hatred. I see people, Americans, cooperating with one another in a very peaceful and productive fashion. We want our schools to be better. We don't want them segregated. And we work together in the PTA and community youth activities committees and other endeavors here in the county, gun control, resisting gun confiscations and abortion, and this is a multiracial effort here in the United States. So if you're a white supremacist, you certainly wouldn't want to be engaged in these types of activities.
Open your web browser and type in www.barnesreview.org and discover the Barnes Review magazine. In the Barnes Review, you will read vignettes of man, from the prehistoric to the very recent, from forgotten races and civilizations to first-person accounts of World War II and the late Cold War. There is no more interesting magazine published today, nor a more significant and important subject than real history. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review. You can subscribe to receive the Barnes Review magazine in its print form, or in convenient electronic delivery. Our host has been a subscriber to both formats for years. So visit www.barnesreview.org and subscribe to the Barnes Review.
Well, the only place I'm seeing, a lot of, shall I say, racism and racial tension in Virginia is probably in the legislature right now.
Well, we do see this, and this is generally, I see also commentators on television. It's a funny thing now, as VP Hughes explains, you can't really win as a white person. Same thing happening there. Blacks have been convinced that whites are their enemy. Therefore, when a white tries to help, they're appropriating culture. When they don't want to help, then they're racist. As I mentioned, I think once before, you go to, let's say you want to go to an African celebration of African culture here in Virginia. If you show up, you're a race appropriator. If you don't show up, you're a racist. Okay? So if you go to a black church and want to see what that's like, then you're what are you doing here? You're spying on us. But if you don't want to go to black church, you're a racist. You can't win the way they've laid the narrative out these days. And in the legislature, they are fighting quite a bit. I don't know if it's racial or not, but it certainly is a left and a right. And remember that lots of leftists and conservatives are very concerned about things that can make life better for everybody. But right now, there's a chip on the shoulder of a lot of black politicians who believe that we're resisting their efforts for social change at every turn. And of course, remember that the woke movement has convinced everybody that women, and here's another communist thing, right? Not just break up the family, break up religion, blah, 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 but also separate the genders. And they've convinced women that they're not being paid as well and all this other stuff, when in fact, when you look at the statistics, women are dominating multiple health fields, for instance. They're titans of business and lawyers and doctors now, and there are differences between the races. That too, but difference between the genders. Okay, it's supposed to be that way. That being said, I wouldn't expect to pay a woman as much as I'd pay a man to dig a ditch, unless she's super strong, and I might not expect a man to do a good job as, say, a school counselor, or an empathetic job that a woman might be more naturally, biologically cut out for. That being said, I see it all the time that women are being weaponized and woke to see everybody's woke to see, awakened to see, that's what that means, to see social injustice everywhere. Maybe as an old privileged white man, I just don't see it. Or maybe it doesn't exist.
Extra, read all about it! If you're like me, and I'll bet you are, you like to be on the cutting edge of honest news and accurate information. You like to hear about the latest financial trends and to know what's happening around the world and right here in the United States. The things that can directly impact you, your life, and the life of your family. And if you're like me, you do not rely on the mainstream media to obtain this information because, frankly, you know that you just can't trust them. Fortunately, there is an alternative news outlet with a long-established track record for honesty and integrity, and that is the American Free Press. AFP is the preeminent alternative, independent news source for honest, hard-working, truth-loving Americans. AFP is the antithesis of the controlled, lamestream media. AFP is employee-owned and has been so since its founding. Because of that, AFP never has and never will allow advertisers or special interests or big money to dictate what appears in the pages of the American Free Press newspaper. 26 times a year, the American Free Press newspaper can be delivered to your door, packed with the kind of uncensored news that I know you're going to appreciate. AFP covers the stories and tells the truth that the lamestream media is frankly scared to touch. and AFP offers real, on-the-scene reporting and commentary, the likes of which you will never see in the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, or just about any other lamestream news source that you can think of. That's right, there's only one national populist news weekly staffed by an unsurpassed team of veteran investigative journalists who will dare to rip the veil off of many of the major news stories that are being censored and suppressed by the big money controlled media monopoly. And that's the American Free Press. AFP publishes exciting, in-depth, uncensored news and information that's grassroots and patriotic, information that Americans need to know in order to combat the growing police state. AFP stands firmly against the New World Order and against those who are working to establish a global plantation under the rule of a powerful few. In short, AFP is your voice. If you have any doubt why they want to silence AFP, you must be relying on the lamestream media for your news, and folks, that's a big mistake. If you're ever dissatisfied with your subscription to the American Free Press, their guarantee is that you just drop them an email and they will gladly refund the unused portion of your subscription. So what are you waiting for? Visit www.americanfreepress.net. Once again, www.americanfreepress.net. And find out about the American Free Press. Do it today.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
So our friend John Schneider, Bo Duke, he's doing something, of course, that he said he would never do, and that is to cancel a big upcoming event that he has there on his property there at John Schneider Studios there in Louisiana, and that is a Bo's Extravaganza, which is, of course, his big birthday party. He's also going to have several concerts, a huge carnival or festival, fair rides and things of that nature. The cast of the Dukes of Hazzard was going to be there. The cast of the Haves and the Have-Nots was going to be there. It was just going to be the birthday party of the century. And he's canceled it. And, of course, that's something he said, even amidst all the hysteria and hype over the coronavirus, that he was not going to do. He's doing it. But he wants you to hear it from himself. So, Bo, you are canceling Bo's Extravaganza.
I didn't want you to hear this on the news. I didn't want you to hear it somewhere else. So I want to just tell you myself. We are, in fact, going to postpone Bo's Extravaganza 2020. However, we are going to maintain a state of readiness. Things change so quickly. I don't honestly think there's a snowball's chance in hell that this ban will be lifted by April 4th. But if it is, we'll be ready and you'll have a place to go. Now, if it's not, then we will plan our event for a very short, because it's here. I mean, it's at the house. It's a birthday party at the house. It's an extravaganza at the house. So we will plan it for as soon after that ban is lifted as we possibly can. Now, because it's right here, then that should be pretty quickly.
So do you think that you'll be able to bring in the same entertainers, the same performers, the same celebrities that were going to be there before, or do you think that they're not going to be available, on the last second, at the last minute, when you try to have the event at a time other than it was originally scheduled? How's that going to work?
Now, with schedules, with different people, with different artists and things, that schedule will likely change. The fact of the matter is that so many things have been canceled, people won't be able to get ready that quickly. So the carnival will still be here, and it'll be here, it'll be ready. So all we have to do really is power it up.
So then hopefully you'll be able to have a lot of the same celebrity guests and entertainers there for the extravaganza, but in the event that one of them can't make it or decides not to make it or whatever reason, will you get other people to take their place, or would it just be an event with one fewer celebrity, or how is that going to work?
Okay. Oh, the artist will likely change. Okay, which just breaks my heart. I love the Bellamy brothers. Who knows? Maybe they can come back anyway, because a lot of those things have been canceled or postponed as well. So we're in a state of flux.
So why are you making the change? Why are you canceling everything here so close to the event now? I mean, you were saying not going to cancel it, not going to cancel it, not going to cancel it, not going to cancel it. And now you're saying, well, hey, we're going to cancel this. I mean, did the government order you to cancel it? Has your opinion of the coronavirus situation, has it changed? What's going on in your head that's saying, hey, we need to re-examine this and, postpone it?
Why am I doing this when I've been so adamant about not doing it? Well, I want to tell you, I do believe it's a violation of our First Amendment rights. I really do. However, I don't want to be seen as, or I do not want to be another issue that our president has to deal with. I became aware this morning that I was going against someone that I support 1,000%, 2,000%. Our president has enough to deal with without having to deal with me being a problem.
So then at a time when so many celebrities now are coming out and saying that supporting President Trump in his 2016 run for the White House was the death nail of their careers, and they're warning other celebrities and other aspiring celebrities, hey, don't publicly support President Trump in his 2020 campaign because it could be the end of your career too. So in the midst of that right now, in the midst of this global pandemic crisis, you're coming out and saying that you're a Trump supporter.
I am a Trump supporter. I believe that our president is not only doing everything that he can during this crisis, but I believe he is doing it in an exceptional way. I think that he was born for such a time as this. And for me, and I realize not everybody agrees, but that's okay. It is a free country. For me, I am so glad that Donald J. Trump is our president during this present darkness. The last thing I want to be is something else for him to have to work through. So, as an American citizen, as a patriot.
So are you going to do anything at all on your birthday, or are you just going to postpone the whole shooting match until whenever this virus hysteria is over with and you can resume the big event?
We're going to have a very small birthday party behind our gate here. Just a few friends and family. We're going to have a little birthday cake. We're not going to have Bo's Extravaganza on the 4th and 5th unless the ban is lifted, in which case the party is on. I will keep you posted as soon as I know anything else, because obviously right now none of us know anything.
So then do you have a target date of when the event might be rescheduled?
I think people that are giving folks we're postponing our such and such until such and such a date. We don't know. We will have Bo's Extravaganza 2020, as long as this thing is lifted in 2020, as soon after, and I mean 2 weeks, maybe 1 week, quickly. We will have it as quickly as possible after this ban is lifted.
Hello, I'm Tom Strain, Lieutenant Commander-in-Chief of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. The Confederate flag, Confederate symbols, and the reputation of our Confederate ancestors has come under attack. The Sons of Confederate Veterans is actively fending off our detractors, but there is only so much that we can do. We need your help. Contact your local, state, and national elected politicians and tell them that you will not tolerate these attacks on our heritage. You can also visit scv.org, download an application to join us in our fight to preserve our Southern heritage. Visit scv.org today. If you don't have a Confederate ancestor and you are tired of American history disappearing, you can assist us by becoming a friend of the SCV. Please visit scvheritagedefense.org and make a donation to the Heritage Defense Fund. We hope that you will join us in the fight to defend the Confederate soldiers' good name.
Well, that's today's show. We are out of time for this week's TBR Radio Presents the Dixie Heritage Show, but we will be back again next week, same time, same place. Tune in again. We'll have another great show for you. Until then, if you just happen to be listening on YouTube, click like and subscribe. That will help our channel out considerably. Also, go to my website, www www.dixieheritage.net. When you're there, sign up to receive a free copy of my weekly newsletter. And when you do, I will also send you absolutely free of charge a copy of my book, The Truth About the Confederate Battle Flag. And so from each of us here at TBR Radio, until next week, God bless. See you soon.